So I kept thinking, what do I do? What do I do? I said, I need some sort of spectacle that the media will organically cover and create excitement about. So I said, I'm going to do a Guinness World Record. When your father dies and you're 12, you don't have a guide. You need to figure things out yourself. Something told them that, my father passed away when I was 12. Maybe I will pass away when my son's 12. Let me just as a backup, let me teach him, things I would have taught him later on in life. He said, remember in life, son, whenever you're scared of something, you should do it. Because if you don't do it, you will be scared of it forever. And if you do it, you'll never fear it again. You know how they say, do what you're passionate about? Mm-hmm. Don't follow that advice. A bad thing happens to you and it's good for you. And a good thing could happen for you and it's bad for you. And we don't know, and only God knows. If one parent can change their ways, take something away from, how my father raised me, then alhamdulillah.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Raising Humans. Today we have brother Zarir with us today. Zarir, welcome to the show.
Ya marhaba, Muhammad.
It's very nice to see you.
Nice to
Zarir,
be here.
for the audience, could you give us a short introduction of who you are, what you do?
Zarir Saifuddin. Old school resident of Dubai. My father opened the branch of his business here in 1972. Mm-hmm. So we've been here for quite a while. My family came here 1 year after the formation of the Emirates.
Wow.
I mean, when I say they came here, my father opened the branch of his business here. I was born in 1985. I'm a businessman. I run a business here in Dubai. Used to work as a management consultant with Ernst & Young. And very passionate about the sea. I love free diving. That's my sport. And I used to play tennis competitively up until high school. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit about me. I like poetry. I like history. Have a few passions, a few things that I'm passionate about.
There's a lot that we can go into. And I was speaking earlier that I listened to a podcast and I spoke to you before, but this was the first time where I could really see into your mind and into your story. And the one thing that truly stood out for me was the way you spoke about your father and your father in general. And the way you spoke about him, he just seemed like such a larger than life character.
Indeed, he was.
And for me, the first question that comes to my mind for this podcast as a father myself is that, what do you think his childhood was like for him to have been crafted into this type of person?
Well, I'm going to surprise you now. His childhood, look, mind you, my father, he passed away when I was 12. So I didn't really have a lot of, I think the time that I had with him was enough for what I needed to take from him in my own life, to apply in my own life. But things like that, his childhood, how he was raised, I learned after he passed away. Those are questions that I asked. You're asking me. Those are questions that I asked my mom, that I asked his brothers, that I asked other people, his friends who grew up with him. But first notable thing about my father's childhood was that just as my father died when I was 12, his father died when he was 12. Yeah.
Same age.
Same age. Incredible coincidence. So his upbringing maybe was similar to that of mine, but he had an incredible father as well. My father's father was a very successful businessman, one of the wealthiest businessmen in his region. So my father grew up in Yemen, in Aden, which was governed by the British, in a big family. He had many brothers and sisters and stepbrothers and stepsisters. So my grandfather had, I believe, 2 or 3 wives. So he grew up without his father past the age of 12, and he inherited a tremendous fortune that was managed by my grandmother, his mother, and he had access to it. He was in a boarding school, and he had access to that wealth relatively early. He got into business relatively early, at, I'd say, 17, 18. And by the time he was in his early 20s, he had done great things with the inheritance that he got from his father. I remember, I've seen photos of him. There's a photo of him that my mother she has of him standing with a white Mercedes convertible, and so he's standing. The white Mercedes convertible is behind him, and his ship is behind the Mercedes. And he's in his 20s.
Wow.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this is when? This is like in the 70s.
Wow.
70s or 60s or something like that. You get what I mean? So so yes, I think, you know, when you're a boy and you lose your father young, it does something to you. You need to up your game a lot. You're forced to. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So what happened with my father, this is my theory, is that he lost his father. He had to up his game. And while he was upping his game, which he did, he had an incredible wealth that he inherited. When put together, you know, he took over. He took over. Anything he did, any industry he got into, he killed it. And in business till today, I mean, just yesterday I was sitting having suhoor with a friend of my father, you know, still, who every time he introduced me to his friends who don't know my father, be like, you know who this young man is? He's the son of so-and-so. He did this, he did that. You know, he's the king of East Africa, the business king, of course. Yeah. So that's something notable about my father, that he grew up without, like me, his father died early.
Do you think he was naturally quite charismatic, or is this something that you feel he learned?
No, this is definitely something that, you know, I mean, God only knows, but if you were to ask me, I'd say he learned it along the way. He learned it along, because he had to. This is part of him having to level up, you know, because he must have known early on that being eloquent and a strong communicator and charming will open doors for him, and, you know, take him places where take him further than money and wealth will. And, you know, there's a poem in Arabic that's attributed to Ali bin Abi Talib, and he says, the meaning of the poem is something similar to what I just said. The words are, كن ابن من شئت واكتسب أدبا يغنيك محموده عن النسب إن الفتى من يقولها أنا ذا ليس الفتى من يقول كان أبي. So the English translation is, be the son of whoever you will. However, acquire eloquence. It will enrich you greater than any lineage. And then the next part of it is, إن الفتى, verily the young man is the one who says, look, إن الفتى من يقولها أنا ذا. Verily the young man is the one who says, this is who I am. ليس الفتى, the young man isn't the one who says, كان أبي. That's who my father was. You know? So the first part of it is what we're talking about, charming and eloquence and the importance of it. And I think this is something that parents, they don't, one of a few things that some parents, or many, who knows, they don't put importance to. The eloquence of, you know, communication skills and eloquence. They say, okay, you know, they just go with the flow. If my kid has got the gift of the gab, he's got it. If he doesn't, maybe he'll get it. You know, and if he doesn't get it, it wasn't meant for him. Doesn't have to be that way. Doesn't have to be that way.
That's really good, and it makes me happy to hear that, because when I heard that from you, it made me realize that if you have a growth mindset, then it means that you are able to learn this skill. Many people would say that charisma is just innate, it's in your DNA. And the fact that your father is who he was, and he learned that himself, it gives hope to a lot of people and parents as well.
You know why I think he learned it and he didn't have it, even though he was like overflowing with charm and charisma, is because I remember once upon a time where I didn't have it.
Really?
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't have it. Yes, you know, and it came, but did it just fall from the heavens? No. And, you know, one way you get it is by observing people who are charming and charismatic. Unfortunately, I observed my father.
Of course, yeah.
You know, I only observed him up until I was 12, but so I didn't really learn how to be charismatic and charming from him consciously, maybe subconsciously. But what I did see consciously was the effect his charm had and his charisma had on the people around him. First of all, my mother, my God, he did a number on her. He did a number on her. I tell you, man, my mom, let me tell you about my mom. My mom, like I told you, my father, he was one of the most important business figures of his time. You know how people, they have two-digit car plates in Dubai?
Mm-hmm.
Our company had a 2-digit trade license. So this shows like how old we are in the country and in the Emirate of Dubai. And we were one of the first companies to open in the Jebel Ali Free Zone when the port first opened. And that's just Dubai. The things we've done in East Africa, he did in East Africa is incredible. Until today, people remember it. So my mother, that's my father. My mother was, I'd say, easily one of the most beautiful women of her time. Easily. There are billionaires of the UAE that proposed to her for marriage the same time my father did. But my father also, at that time, when they proposed to her, I won't mention the names because they're known. Everybody knows these names. And they, at that time, we're talking in the late 70s, early 80s, they weren't billionaires. Billionaires didn't exist in general, and especially not in Dubai.
Yeah.
Dubai was a desert emirate. They were wealthy businessmen. But I believe that in those days, my father was equally as wealthy to them, if not possibly slightly more. She said no to them, yes to my father. Why? Because of his charm and charisma. After he died, the same guys proposed to her again. And now they're billionaires. And now they're billionaires. And they could have any beautiful woman in the world. And she still said no. Why did she say no? Because of the number my father did on her. How he charmed her. She could not, no other man existed. So when she would get proposals, even after my father died, from some of the wealthiest businessmen in Dubai, it wasn't a hard decision for her to make. Do you get me?
Yeah.
So this is a little bit about my mom, but just to give you an idea of what I saw of the impact of my father's charm. But I'll tell you something. I remember sometimes, I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know if it's appropriate or not.
Go for it.
Go for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can always edit it out.
We can edit it out? Okay, if you want to edit it out, I'll edit it out. I remember one of the memories I have of my father is that we were on holiday and we were checking into the hotel, and my mom is with my older brother and I'm with my father checking in. And there's the pretty lady across the counter, taking the reservation, everything, giving the keys and all the stuff. And I noticed she was like giggling and joking with my father. My father didn't initiate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She started. And then my father, maybe he slightly responded, just out of courtesy, because it's kind of rude to not reply to him, just stay quiet. You know what I mean? So he kind of responded. But I didn't understand what was going on, but I didn't like it. Do you know, even as a kid, I didn't like it. So then when we went up to the room, I snitched on him. I told my mom, I couldn't take it. I told my mom, I'm like, Mom, you know what happened? She's like, what? She's like, the lady downstairs at the check-in, she was saying something and she was giggling and trying to make dad giggle and this and that, and dad smiled at and this and
Yeah.
And then but look at my mom. My dad just looked at her and smiled. He didn't get angry at me. He looked at me, he smiled. He looked at her and smiled, and he just shrugged his shoulders, And she made a face, but not too much of an angry face. And that was it. I never saw them fight. I never ever saw them fight. You know how it's common for today for women to raise their voice on their men in front of the kids, not in front of the kids, in public. I never saw this. My mom, my dad was no angel. He was no saint. He's a human like any other man. We make mistakes. Men make mistakes. Men make mistakes all the time. If you're a man, you're gonna make mistakes.
Yeah.
So, but I never saw my mom raise her voice at him. Never. And I do know that when she didn't want to discuss something with him, something heated. She would do it in her bedroom with a low voice so we don't hear it, and the door's locked. And do it at night when she'd think we're asleep. So all of this also it really helps. I feel it helps kids. It gives them that heavenly environment in the home that makes their childhood just like I described it, heaven.
Like a safe haven.
Exactly. And it's heaven. It's heaven on earth. And because what's worse than your mom or dad shouting at you as a child is seeing them shout at each other. Do you know what I mean? And I never saw this. I never ever saw this. Alhamdulillah. And that's why it was so painful for me when my father passed away, because I felt like I was living heaven on earth. But I could go on and on, brother. I can go on and on.
What do you think your father went through when his father passed away? Because you can directly sympathize with him.
He struggled. He definitely struggled, because when your father dies and you're 12, you don't have a guide. You need to figure things out yourself. People, they're impressed with my journey and how much I know and what I've achieved. But this is, this is all with me having to figure it out myself. So sometimes I think to myself, like just the other day, I was in the gym, and when I'm in the gym, I don't sit down in between sets. I like to walk.
Okay.
So I'm walking and I'm thinking to myself, like, how far would I be in life today if my father was alive and I had his guidance? Do you know what I mean? I didn't have to start from zero. I didn't have to make mistakes, like, and then realize it's a mistake and figure out the right way to do things.
Do you feel that you would have been further along, or do you feel that if you had someone there to, like a safety net, that you wouldn't have tried as hard?
There you go. That's a good question. That's a good question. And your question, you just corrected that thought in my head, because you're right. Prior to that thought, the asl, or the original thought that I always knew to be true, and I know to be true even now, is that had my father been alive, I would not have achieved as much as I did. And possibly had his father been alive, he would not have achieved and built the business empire he did. He would not have gotten the beautiful wife that he did and the amazing woman that he got. You know what I mean? Because he wouldn't have had to try as hard.
Yeah.
So that's why perhaps a bad thing happens to you and it's good for you, and a good thing could happen for you and it's bad for you, and we don't know, and only God knows what's good.
That's why they give the analogy between charcoal and how are diamonds created. They're created under pressure. If there's no pressure, then they'll just remain as charcoal, and you'll use that to warm you up. But if there's pressure consistently over a period of time, they turn into diamonds. And those diamonds now are the most precious and the most valuable things in the world today. And therefore, the same analogy applies to human beings, that when you put under pressure, then you've made something beautiful.
Pressure knows me very well, and I know it very well as well. We're intimate friends.
Give me some examples of when you felt tremendous pressure.
The examples are many, but none of them are recent. None of them are recent, because, like I told you, when you become intimate with pressure and you know it intimately, then it leaves you, goes to other people. Says, this guy, there's no point trying with this guy. He got used to me. Let me go mess with somebody else. So the examples are from the past. I mean,
give me one where you felt the most intense pressure, the toughest time in your life.
Okay, one of the toughest times in my life. I used to, while I was at Ernst & Young, I started an exhibitions business. And you know how they say, do what you're passionate about? Don't follow that advice. There's so many advice out there that can kill you. And that doesn't work. It sounds nice. There's so much advice on important things like marriage, like business, that sounds right, but it's wrong. One of those advice is do what you're passionate about. What you're passionate about isn't necessarily going to make you a lot of money or make you money that can cover your basic living expenses. Two, it can kill you. You know, because passion can kill sometimes.
Yeah.
Passion can kill sometimes. So I had bought that lie. And if you look at some of the biggest businessmen in the world, how did they make their wealth? There's a guy in China that's a billionaire who sells bars of soap. You think when he was a kid, he's like, I want to grow up and sell bars of soap? He saw an opportunity in bars of soap, did the math, said, I can become a billionaire through this, became a billionaire through it, and then spends his money on his family and the things that he's passionate about. So I didn't know this. I heard, do what you're passionate about. I said, khalas. So my father was a businessman and I have to bring back his empire. I promised myself that since I was a child. So I said, I've waited long enough. The next business idea I have, I'm going to do it. I said, how can I, Zarir Saifuddin, who I know to be not scared of anything, be scared of starting a business? Like the guy downstairs in the grocery store who started a grocery store. He's not scared to start a business, but I'm scared to start a business. Hell no. The minute that thought came into my mind, I said, the next idea I get, I'm doing it. Next idea I got was to create a consumer exhibitions business and create consumer events for the things that I'm passionate about, namely action sports, extreme sports. So, motorsports and water sports. And I didn't know that the exhibitions business is a very tough business, capital intensive. You have to spend a lot of money in booking venues and halls upfront, and exhibitors join last minute because they're not going to pay you for an event 6 months in advance. They're going to pay you just before they get the benefit. But I didn't know all this because I'm a rookie. And so I had my inaugural event. I launched it in July. It was set for September. And I didn't know as well that summer is the worst time to attempt to sell exhibition booth because all decision makers are on holiday. And I said to myself, I needed to have, because it's an inaugural event, I didn't have a lot of money for marketing, but I needed a lot of people to come. So I kept thinking, what do I do? I said, I need some sort of spectacle that the media will organically cover and create excitement about. So I said, I'm going to do a Guinness World Record for the longest breath hold underwater. Not me, I'm going to organize it. And the existing record was 11 minutes, 15 seconds by some French guy. And I knew a Serbian guy who could break that record. But he hadn't done it yet because he wanted to do it in a spectacular way. So I reached out to him. I said, I have an event. It's called the Extreme Sports Expo. It's taking place in September. And can you break the record over there? He's like, yes, I can. I said, if you do, I'm going to give you 120,000 dirhams in sponsorship money, which I didn't have. But I told him I'm going to give it to him because he won't do it for free. And the prize money for another free diving tournament in Dubai was $500,000, but was sponsored by the Crown Prince. So listen, I'm not the Crown Prince of Dubai. I can't give you $500,000, but I can give you 120,000. I can give you 10,000 dirhams for every minute that you stay underwater. You do 12 minutes, you break the record, you get 120. He's like, deal. So now I have a world record attempt. I don't have the sponsorship money and I don't have any exhibitors, but I've announced the event. But the media covered it like crazy. The media went with it. They covered like Extreme Sports Expo. It had such a catchy name. And then, so they covered the Extreme Sports Expo, that went viral across the traditional media. I was on the radio, on TV, interview. Everybody, all of Dubai is excited about it. Then when I announced the world record attempt, the excitement just goes berserk. Like globally now, it's a fun, people are talking about it. And I don't have any exhibitors. And I don't have a sponsor for the 120,000. So I had to learn the hard way. That's when I knew that I needed to learn. I need to become an eloquent communicator. I needed to learn how to sell, and the importance of selling. So I did a crash course on selling. I started to read sales books. And, I did that, got good, had to, started to sell exhibition space, fill it up little by little. And this is all like within a short time period. So July, I announced it. The event is in September. I had like 30 days to learn how to sell and to sell a whole event and get sponsorship. So I had the commitment of a brand for the world record as well. They saw all of the media coverage. They knew that if this is just the announcement, the media coverage of the announcement of the world record, if he actually breaks the world record, the media coverage will be insane. So they came to me and they're like, and I knew the guy. He was the VP of marketing for a very big company. I won't say the company. Very, very big company. And he said, Zarir, how much do you need? 120,000? It was actually more than 120,000. 120,000 was just what the guy got. Then there's execution expenses as well. So he said, consider it done, And the chairman of that company was a very good friend of mine as well. So the VP of marketing and the chairman are my friends. The VP of marketing, I know since we're kids. The chairman, I know also for many, many years, like 10, 15 years. So I consider it done. Chairman loves the idea, we're in. But they wouldn't sign the contract. They wouldn't sign he wouldn't sign the sponsorship agreement. Time passed. We're now 3 weeks away from the event. We've entered September. It's at the end of September, the event. We entered September, and he still hasn't signed the contract. And I went up to him and I started to suspect, like, is he going to do it or not? And I don't have time now the last 3 weeks of your event, you need to execute. You cannot focus. The only thing you can do in a consumer event when you're 2 to 3 weeks away is focus on marketing and execution. You can't sell, especially get sponsorship. So I was dependent on him. And I went up to him like, listen, are you going to do it or what? He said, yeah, we're in. He's like, I'm like, you haven't sent me the signed contract. He's like, you want the signed contract? Here's the signed contract. He took it out of his desk. He signed it. And he's like, he said, see, it's signed. I'm just going to get permission from the chairman to give it to you today and I'll email it to you tomorrow. When he said that, something didn't sit right with me. That night, I called the chairman myself. Called him and I said, yeah, marhaba Abu Fulani. He was very happy to hear from me. And I was happy to hear from him. He was in America. So that's why the guy said, he's in America. I'll wait till tonight, just speak to him and I'll email it to you. So I said, how's the States? He's like, good. He's like, where you been? I missed you. And how's things? I'm like, good. How's things? He's good. I'm like, yeah, Abu Fulan. I'm like, I just wanted to call you to say hello. Also, just to follow up with you on the contract for the sponsorship of the world record. I've been chasing so-and-so for a while and he keeps telling me he's waiting for your okay. So he's like, what world record? Like, the world record that I'm organizing, in 3 weeks that you guys are sponsoring. He's like, well, nobody told me anything about it. He's like, I'm like, for real? He's like, for real? Yeah. He's like, the guy didn't tell you? He's like, no, he didn't tell me anything about it. That's when I realized what happened. That childhood friend of mine saw this opportunity and wanted to organize it himself. He wanted me to think that he was sponsoring it, pull the carpet under my feet, then do it himself because he knows who the athlete is. He's already seen the media coverage that it can get. Why sponsor it when he can get credit for organizing it with the higher ups and in the country? And he knew within 3 weeks, there's no way I would be able to get sponsorship for an inaugural event 3 weeks away. But guess what? I did. I had the decision to make. I said, in these 3 weeks, I have two options. I can scrap the world record and focus just on marketing the exhibition, the Extreme Sports Expo, and focus on executing it. Or I can take 1 week out of those 3 weeks and attempt to raise capital for sponsorship. And I decided to do that. I said, I'm going to raise that money. And within 1 week, I had three companies wanting to sponsor the world record. And I had to choose one of the three. And I got the money and it went through. And it was a success. The guy broke the record, got 120,000. Wow. And that friend of mine was shocked. The guy who tried to stab me in the back, he was shocked. Like, how did this guy pull it off? You know what I mean? It wasn't impossible. Alhamdulillah, God, when you're determined, God makes the impossible possible. So this isn't the craziest situation, but this was the start of crazy situations once I got into business, you know?
Yeah.
And then from there, it's just
It's all downhill.
things started getting tougher and crazier, and the challenges started getting bigger. But I knew it was training. It was just my training ground. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
I knew every time I had a mountain to climb or I got hit hard, I knew that this was God training me for the big mission that I have to achieve ahead, which now when I look back at it, I'm thankful for everything, for my father passing away, for the betrayal of my childhood friend in that moment. I look at it as something tiny now, yeah. But all of these things resulted in what? Resulting in me not feeling pressure anymore. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Not feeling pressure, but
I think what a lot of parents try to do sometimes is they try to shield their children away from these type of obstacles. They're trying to protect them. What do you think about that?
what did my father do? Did my father? No. Look, my father, did he protect? He was very he was protective and then not ultra protective. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you two stories of my father. One story is when my father sent me, of when he was not ultra protective. When my father sent me to America the first time, I was 9 years old. 9 years old. He sent me to America alone. To Miami, to a tennis academy. It was the best tennis academy in the world, called Nick Bollettieri. And he sent me there, and it's the first time I'm traveling that far alone. And my father would make me travel alone even before that, because we used to have a holiday home in Cyprus. And I started to travel alone when I was 5. Send me unaccompanied minor, to my mom, back and forth, So, but this is the first time I'm going to America. I'm 9. Tennis academy. And I remember when I got there, I called them and I was really like, because everything was different over there. When I was going to Cyprus, I was going to our family home over there, and I'm staying with my mom. I'm now in Miami. I'm staying in dorms with strangers. The boys are older than us, and they're not the same skin as my skin and your skin. So they're treating me differently, and they're picking on me. I remember they're putting like ants. They'd put ants on my bed, the ones that bite, and do all sorts of mean things to me. And I remember the first day I called my father and I said, I want to come back. I said, all of this is happening. I want to come back. Bring me back. And he said, no, you're going to stay there. He said, you can do it. You're going to stay there. You're going to become a man. You're going to be a man. And I remember he said that. Like, my father was never forceful or anything, but at that moment, because he saw I was weakening, he knew what to say when. And he said, there's no coming back, son. You're there you're coming back 2 weeks from now. Go there, play tennis, kick ass, then you come back. And that's what I did. And I'll tell you something funny about that trip to Miami. My first trip to Miami is that in Nick Bollettieri's tennis academy, they had many courts. So I believe they had something like 50 courts. Depending on your level, you will be on a certain number court. So if you were really, let's say 50 is court 1 is where the best players play. And we're talking about ATP professionals, the ones who play competitively globally at the highest level. And then 50 is probably kids, So when I came to the academy, they saw my size. I was short for my age at the time. So they saw my size, said, go to court 50. So I went to court 50 and I started to hit. And the coach is like, no, you go to court 42. So I went to court 42. I started to hit. The coach is like, no, you go to 36. And I went to 36. Same thing happened until I was at court, I don't know, some crazy number, court 17. And when I came to the court, the coach was like, what do you want? I'm like, court so-and-so sent me here. He said, son, you here to do what? He said, to play. He said, you here to play? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, play. Hit. So he hits with me, and then he's just shocked. And he's like, okay, stay. Okay, stay, because I was really good at tennis. Really good. When I was 9, I was ranked number 1 in under 14s. When I was 9, 10, I was ranked number 1 under 14s. When I was 12, I was beating 18-year-olds. And this is an example of when my father got protective. Because just before he died, I started to play like in age groups much higher than mine. So I was playing under 16, under 18. I wasn't winning the tournaments, but I was kicking ass. I was like beating a lot of 16 and 18-year-olds. And there was one, I don't remember if he was 16 or 17 or 18. He was much older than me, between 16 to 18, and I had beat him as part of a tournament. So he's kicked out. I move on to the next round. And this was a huge embarrassment for the opponent. Because a 12-year-old kicks your ass, but I wasn't any 12-year-old. It's okay to lose to Zarir, regardless of what age he is. But he took it personally. So people were were making fun of him, his own friends, his age. And our house was close to the tennis court, to the club. It was just across the road. And so I walked home after beating him, and my father had a racket. He said, son, look at this racket. This is my oldest racket. And I looked at it and I really liked it. I'd never seen a racket that old. I said, you know what, Dad? Do you mind if I go and hit with it? Go back to the club? And he's like, yeah, sure. So I took the racket. I crossed the street again, went to the club to hit with the racket. And on the court is who? Is that 18-year-old boy with his friends. And they had just finished making fun of him for losing to me. So when he saw me come back, he grabbed me on the court. And he said, I heard you were telling people that you're better than me. And I said, I didn't say I was better than you. I said, I beat you, which is what I did. He said, say that I'm better than you. I'm like, no, I won't say that. He's like, no, you'll say it. I'm like, no, I won't. And then he started to beat me.
A punch?
Yeah, I don't remember. This is a long time ago, but he started to beat me. He put me on the floor. Yes, now I'm remembering, he used to punch me. Not only him, he had another friend his age. It was the two of them. One was holding me down and the other one was kicking me. He was kicking me. And then while they're beating me, the guy would say that I'm better than you. And I say, I won't. And he'd keep hitting me. Say that I'm better than you. I say, I won't. And people are watching this. Nobody's doing nothing. An 18-year-old beating up a 12-year-old kid. And he wasn't taking it easy on me. And it hurt so much that at one point, I remember I told him, he said, say that I'm better than you. And I said, I swear to God, I won't. And when you're a kid, even as an adult, but especially when you're a kid, when you swear by God, there's no undoing that. And when I screamed, I swear to God, I won't say it, they all knew that I'm never going to say it. And they stopped. They stopped at that point. They had already beat the crap out of me. I was already bleeding. My clothes were torn. And then they stopped. But they stopped hitting me. But you know what they did then? They grabbed me, lifted me up, the two of them. They threw me in a garbage bin. And then they left. And I crawled out of the garbage bin. When I say garbage bin, what do you imagine?
Just a bin where you put trash in.
Yeah, but what type of bin? I'm talking about, the big ones, the ones with that the trucks come,
the commercial ones.
The commercial ones. They threw me in one of those, and climbed out of it, and walked home, bleeding, clothes torn, 12 years old, and I walk back into the back of our villas where we had the kitchen. That's where that's where I left my father. That's where I saw him when he gave me the racket. So he was still sitting there. And when I walked in, I just saw the look on his face. It was like a look of terror and shock. Like just moments ago, 40 minutes ago, I left. 30 minutes ago, I left. And I was jolly and my clothes were in one piece and I wasn't bleeding. And now I walk in and I am how I am. And he said, what happened to you? And I said, so-and-so beat me up. And he just grabbed me and he put me in the car, take me to the hospital. While he's driving in the car, he's going through the tennis club because it's across the road from us, going through the tennis club. I don't know why. Maybe that was the way to the hospital, but he went through through the tennis club, and God decreed as he's driving, that 18-year-old's crossing the road. Imagine, look at the fate. That 18-year-old's crossing the road. And you know what he looked at? My father's eyes went like there was blood in his eyes. And I saw that 18-year-old boy's eyes as well. It was like, what do they call it? Deer in headlights? My father floored it. He had the BMW 750. It's a V12. He floored it. And the 18-year-old started to run. And my father is chasing him with the car. And he ran into the changing rooms. My father parked the car in the middle of the room, ran after him. It was like National Geographic, you know, like the lion chasing the gazelle. The guy, and everyone realized what happened because they saw my father chasing him. They saw me, the adults, they put 2 and 2 together and they're chasing after my father. And the guy went inside the change room and he locked the door. He locked the door. My father's trying to break the door. People are holding him. Anyways, my father, they said, take your son to the hospital. Took me to the hospital. Cops came, took the guy and took him to the station. The next day they asked me, if I want to press charges on what he did. I said, I don't want to press charges. Alhamdulillah, I never press charges on anyone. You take the hits. I never press charges. But that was an example of my father being protective, so to speak, But, and then there's the example of him not being so protective, sending me all the way to America, 9 years old. What parent does that today? Most parents. They wouldn't do that, right? My father did. My father did. Because I think, you know why he did that? I'm just like trying to understand it now. Is because he understood there was a benefit from him being away from his mom and dad when he was in a boarding school. Do you know what I mean? Those days we had boarding. Do you not find it funny how those days in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there was a concept such as boarding schools and parents, the wealthy parents would send their children to boarding schools? And how today we never hear of anyone going to a boarding school?
Very interesting. I've never really thought about it like that.
And that's why I think my father sent me to Miami, because he said, my son's not in a boarding school, but maybe by sending him alone at 9 in summer to this tennis training camp, he'll get a bit of that benefit that I got from being in the boarding school.
Did you feel your personality change when you came back?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Of course, brother. Of course. Whenever you go outside of your comfort zone, that's where the development occurs. Something that we've heard many, many times again. So when I came back from Miami, traveling alone, at lesser things were scarier to me as a 9-year-old. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What was scary to other 9-year-olds, what was scary to 14-year-olds was not scary to this 9-year-old because of that trip to Miami. Do you get me? So
one of the lessons that I remember that you mentioned previously was how your father was when it came to different sports. So the story I had in mind was when you first started playing tennis and it was your second time playing.
Yeah.
And he noticed that there were certain shots that you would take and others that you wouldn't.
Absolutely.
And at the end, he brought you aside and asked you, why didn't you do that? And you gave him the reason that there's some shots that I don't think I'm even going to make it. So there's no point even trying. Absolutely. Yeah. And I listened to that and it really struck home for me. And yesterday I was playing paddle and I thought, you know what? I'm going to take the advice of Zarir's father. And every shot I tried to take, and I'd say about 50% of them, surprisingly, somehow I managed to get it over the net. And I won more games yesterday than I ever won over the last couple of months.
SubhanAllah.
And I just thought, imagine I'm just trying this once. If you compound this over years, and I also teach this to my own child, then not only in sports, but what other benefits can they derive from the outside of the sport?
Brother, it starts with sports. It starts with that game of tennis that you did yesterday. But then it has, whether you realize it or you don't, it has application in so many other things in your life. Do you know what I mean? Incredible lesson. My father taught me so young. And he taught me so many lessons so young. So many lessons so young that you would not expect a grown man to teach a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, 6-year-old. It's almost as if he knew something told him that, my father passed away when I was 12. Maybe I will pass away when my son's 12. Let me just as a backup, let me teach him, things I would have taught him later on in life.
'Cause,
Maybe
yeah,
that's
no,
it. Because it
I-
doesn't make sense. There's no explanation for
I
it.
don't think it's maybe. I think it's definitely, because if his father passed away at 12, there would be times in his life where he wished, I wished I knew this earlier, or I wished if my father was alive, he'd teach me. And this was either consciously or subconsciously in his mind that we're not here forever. So if the time is now, let me teach him now.
SubhanAllah. You know, you liked the story of the lesson he taught me on the tennis court. You just reminded me of another lesson he taught me. And this was not when I was 4, it was when I was 5. And we were at our holiday home in Cyprus during the summer holidays, and we were on the beach. And my father saw a paraglider. So it's the parachute connected to a boat with a rope.
Yep.
And he got excited about it. And my father's very calm and cool, composed guy. Yani. It's like James Bond. You don't see James Bond getting excited.
Yeah.
But he got excited that day when he saw it. And he started to follow that parachute all the way to the marina and taking me with him. And when we reached the marina, I see he's speaking to a lady that's in charge of the boat. And then he comes to me, he's like, okay, son, guess what? I'm like, what? He's like, you're going to go up. I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, why? I'm like, Dad, I'm not going to go up. I'm scared. He's like, no, but there's nothing you need to worry about. You're going to be, it's safe. You're strapped. I'm like, no, I don't want to go up. What are you talking about? Imagine a 5-year-old, you're going to sending up into the sky.
Yeah.
That's like sending a 5-year-old to skydive in a way.
Yeah.
It's a parachute, right? And you're in the air. I'm like, no way. Then he tried to bribe me. He's like, I'll give you money for arcades. I'm like, Dad, I don't want money for arcades. I'm not doing it. And he's like, what's wrong? He's still trying to use his charm to get me. So he's like, listen, you're not going to go up alone. He's like, you're going to go up with this pretty lady, not even with a guy, with a pretty lady. I'm like, Dad, I'm 5 years old. I don't care if it's a pretty lady or a pretty guy. I don't care. I'm not going up, you know? When I told him that, I saw his face change. Like when I told him I'm not going up, I saw his face change. He realized that I'm not going to do it. And all that time when he was trying to charm me into doing it, he was confident that I would say yes. When I said that no, he knew it was a no. I wasn't going to do it. And like his smile went away, and that hurt me. I remember it till this day. And I was upset with myself. Like, why did I take my father's smile away? That, I've never seen that happen. He's always smiling, always happy. So time, like a few months passed, summer ended, we're back in Dubai, we're having dinner, just me and him, in a famous Chinese restaurant in the Yafa, and he brings it up again. He's like, son, why didn't you go up that day on the parachute? I said, Dad, because I'm scared of heights. It was so high, I was scared. He said, you were scared? I'm like, yeah. After dinner, he took me to the Trade Center. Took me to, the World Trade Center?
Yeah.
Sheikh Rashid Tower. Those days, we're talking 1990. It was the tallest tower in Dubai, possibly in the whole UAE. And my father had an office there. So he took me up to the roof. Remember we were talking about how like getting into places we shouldn't get into. I think, he had a talent for that as well. So
That's hereditary. I think.
yeah, maybe. Yes. He took me up to the roof. I'm on the roof of the Sheikh Rashid Tower, Dubai World Trade Center. And he holds my hand and we walk towards the edge of the building. Like there's fences and everything. And I stand up on a kind of a step towards the edge and he tells me, look over. And I'm holding the edge and there's no way I can fall over. Like my head can barely reach the edge, but I look over and I see it. And then I step back and then he says, do it again. And I step over and I look. Now I'm looking over like for a couple of seconds longer than I was before. I step back. And the third time I'm just like looking over and I'm just mesmerized by the view. I'm no longer scared, but I'm liking it. And he's like, how is it? He's like, I'm like, I like it. And he's like, you're not scared? He's like, no, I told him I'm not scared. He's like, exactly, son. He said, son, in life, remember in life, son, that whenever you're scared of something, you should do it. Because if you don't do it, you will be scared of it forever. And if you do it, you'll never fear it again. That's what he told me those days. And it was so impactful because of the way he said it and the place he said it in. Said it to me on the roof of the World Trade Center to a 5-year-old. And it hit me hard and deep. And from that day onwards, whenever I felt fear in my heart of anything, I did it. And that's why I got into business. Remember? I told you?
Yeah.
I said, like, am I scared to lose money? Am I scared to fail, to lose money? I'm not scared of anything. I'm scared to lose. No. The minute I felt that, I'm like, I got to do it. I got to kill this. And that was my life. Throughout my life, whenever I felt fear, whether it was, I remember I was passing by the beach one day at night, and I saw the sea at night. And I visualized me swimming in the sea for a moment, and I felt fear. I said, now I got to do it. So now I got to do it. So I went to the beach at night. I was young. I was like early teens. And I didn't even have swimming shorts. So I was like in my boxers. Those days, there was nobody on the beach at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I left my clothes, I went into the water just because I felt that fear. I said, I got to do it. And I'm scared. And I'm going in like very slowly, like step after step after step after step. And the water's getting higher and higher and higher and higher. And now the water is up until my neck. And I'm like still a bit scared. And just as I'm starting to get acclimatized to it, something touches my foot. Something big touches my foot. And I spook. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell is that? I start to panic in the water. You know what it was? Guess.
A rock.
A plastic bag. It was a plastic bag. And then I realized, brother, there's nothing. It's like how I convinced myself not to be scared of the dark when I was a child. Because I logically told myself as a child, there's nothing in this room. There's nothing in this room that is there when the lights are off, that's not there when it's on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, makes sense.
And it's the same thing with the sea. There's nothing in the sea at night that's not there during the day, whether you're in the beach or deep in the sea. And that same kid that was scared of walking into the beach and swimming in the beach at night, you know, I don't tell people about this that much, and I don't promote it or advertise it because it's a bit different. But in summer, because, you know, it's very hot and I go free diving in the sea during the day. But what I love doing is going free diving in the sea in the middle of the night, deep in the sea. So we're talking about free diving in the middle of the sea, deep, holding your breath in the middle of the night. So imagine, it's like I have my boat, I have a float, I have a rope with a weight, and I go down holding my breath. I have no fins, just a mask just a mask. I go down all the way to the bottom, and we're talking about like 20, 25 meters, not so deep because it's at night, but still like a good depth. We're talking 66 to 80 foot for people who are American. And I'm holding the weight with my feet on the sea floor in the darkness, deep in the sea, holding my breath. And it's like you're in outer space. Your eyes adjust to whatever light is there. So like the moonlight and the light of the stars, but past, I'd say 5 meters is pitch black. But am I panicking? I'm at home. I'm super relaxed. I'm in what the European liberals call Zen. I'm in Zen. I'm in Zen over there, where most other people that would be like their worst nightmare. But how did it get to that? That's like when you follow that principle that I told you that my father taught you. Whenever you're scared of something, do it. And then you'll never fear it again. You know? So that's another principle takeaway from my father.
I need more.
If you haven't applied it yet, you should.
Wow, that's amazing. Both these principles, I think when you sit down and actually contemplate the lessons, and I feel that sometimes it's also, he's doing this all intentionally, like a showman. He took you to that building for a reason, because then saying that on top of the building would ensure that that line will be in your heart forever.
See, what do I tell you? I told you my father, he did a number on my mother. He did a number on me as well.
Yeah.
Did a number on me. He knew what he was doing, you know? He knew what he was doing. Wallah. Unbelievable, man. That's why I told you he was rare. It's very rare.
Could you remember any other lessons that really resonate with you that you think about immediately when I ask you this question?
You know, lessons, I'd say, as a child, I would not be who I am today and the person I am today, the resilient person, the person who never gives up, if it wasn't for my father putting me in sports and putting me in sports early. Yeah. He wasn't the type of father who like forced me to do sports. He just introduced it to me. And then I went with it. But he introduced it to me early. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And like there were fathers, I remember, there were the fathers of the kids who I used to beat. They were dictatorial with them. Like, no, you have to train. No, you have to be good. No, you have to win. Father was chilled. My father wouldn't even come watch me some of the tournaments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas the dictatorial fathers would like be there all the time. But I think sports teaches, I know that sports teaches children so many important lessons that they need for their lives and for their futures. And I see too many parents these days like prioritizing education and not giving sport that priority. And really, like, if you ask me, there's more for kids to learn in sports than there is in what we call modern education in school. Like your kid, I mean, I don't want to be materialistic or anything, but if your boy or girl is kick-ass at sports, at the age of 18, they'll be able to buy a house that, they would never be able to buy in 10 lifetimes as an accountant.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? They'll buy a house, they'll buy that palace for them and a separate palace for each of you. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So sports isn't emphasized. I wouldn't be who I am today if I wasn't if my parents didn't put me in sports.
Outside of money, I think that it builds upon so many other skills like resilience, like if like understanding that you might not be good at something on day one, but you show up every day, you have that consistency and discipline, and over time, because a master was once a beginner
Absolutely.
in everything. And I think the most important is that learning to lose is very important, because you'll find children today, even in school, that they'll get tantrums or they're so afraid to lose, they won't even try in the first place.
Yeah.
And you will see that these children are very, very soft. And when you say, yes, you can make a lot of money in sports, but there are hundreds of other skills underneath that where you might not see it.
I resonate with so many things you just said. One is you said it's not even about money. It's about the life skills that the kids learn through sports. I only brought up the money thing is because there are so many parents whose focus for their kids is money. It's like, no, I don't want him to play sports because if he's smarter, he will make more money. Not true. Okay. There's a famous book. It's called Why Do A Students Work for C Students and D Students Are Millionaires or something like this.
Yeah.
So if your boy is an A student, likely he's going to work for a C student. It's not what you think. So they focus on the education at the cost of sports, thinking that it's going to benefit their child, where many times it doesn't. It doesn't. And another thing is learning to lose. And you talked about resilience. I was the junior tennis champion for a long time, but then I got bored of tennis. And I'll tell you, like there was a turning, and then I got into basketball. How do I get into basketball? Is how I got into basketball is one day when I was finished tennis training, I saw kids playing basketball, and I was short. I went to play with them, and I got slaughtered. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to shoot, didn't know how to dribble, and I hated being bad at it. And that stubbornness in me said, no, I'm going to get good. I missed all of my shots. I got a ball, started to practice. Long story short, I became really good. Just as good as I was at tennis, I became equally as good as basketball. And in high school, I was then the captain of the junior basketball team. And our junior team had never won any tournament. We were not famous for basketball. We didn't even have a basketball court. We just had a hoop on tarmac. So what happened once is every year they have the most prestigious a basketball tournament called the Inter-School Championships for the junior teams, senior teams. This is back in the day in Dubai. So what happened was there was a miscommunication, and they sent us, the junior team, on the day of the seniors, which is the first day of the tournament. So I show up with my team, and I'm seeing the senior teams of all of the other schools and none of the junior teams. So by the time I realize what's going on, it's already too late. Like, there's no way on a Friday morning I can call. There's no mobile phones those days. No. Nobody's gonna come. There's no Kafu, there's no Kareem, there's no telephone. So we have to play. The junior team needs to play in the senior team's place, the senior inter-school championships. But we were really good because I used to train just as hard as I did in tennis. I used to train in basketball, and so did my team. They were forced to train with me that hard. And we had this incredible camaraderie. And this is what I loved about God taking me from tennis to basketball, because tennis was a solo sport. Basketball is a team sport. So I learned how to command the team there, and how to build them up and train together and win together and play together and lose together and to come back and win after losing. So on that day on the tournament, we're now in the qualifiers and we're playing the seniors, and it's like a battle, like the hardest sports tournament I ever competed in. It's like the senior team would score a point, but we would fight, we would score another point. So it's 2-0, 2-2, 4-2, 4-4, 6-4, 6-6. And then we ended up winning by 2 points, one shot. We win the first game. Second game, same thing. We win just by like 2 points again. Third game, we win again. Now we qualified. Now we're in the qualifiers. Because even though we were a junior team, we were really good. We were we could play at the senior team level. We reached the quarterfinals, we won again by 2 points. We reached the semifinals, we won again. Now, for the first time in UAE history, the Al Mawakib School junior basketball team has reached the finals of the senior inter-school championships. Our senior team has never reached the finals, has never reached the quarterfinals. The junior team has reached it. And now we're up against Emirates International School. And they had a specific basketball coach and a 5-star basketball court, and we're playing on their ground. The tournament was, because they had the best basketball facility. It was owned by the Habtour family. And so anyways, we lost that game. We lost it properly. It was not a close loss. They were all like huge guys and they killed us. But what happened was, the first day of school, when we got back, the principal of the school interrupted my class. She was, her name was Alisar Nasr. And she went to school with an NBA player, university with an NBA player called Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And Kareem, when he came to Dubai, visited her in her school and signed the basketball, which they kept in the school's trophy cabinet. And she interrupted the class, and she entered the classroom with that basketball, and she gave it to me. She said, "This is for what you did on the weekend." Until today, I have that basketball in my house. So, why am I sharing this with you? Again, like, it's, who would I be without sports? Yet there are so many kids that play video games. They might play football, for example. They just like, their parents like, oh, but he plays football. That's not a sport. He just plays it as a pastime. Do you know what I mean? Is he part of a team? Does he have training daily? He doesn't. He just plays football with his friends. That's not sports. But that's my 2 cents on lessons. And I hope, like, at least if one parent can change their ways and take something away from, how my father raised me, then alhamdulillah.
And like I was telling you at the start, that the purpose of this podcast was to derive some lessons from your father, because it's very clear that he was a very wise man. And if some of these lessons are taken on board and other children are benefiting, and good comes from it, then inshallah he'll get the reward of that as well. And whoever listens to this.
Bidhanillah. I hope so, wallah.
And I feel like when you explain your father, I feel like you embody him really, really well. Like I feel like you are like just like him.
Ya Allah.
And I'm sure people have said that as well.
Wallah, that is the best compliment anyone can give me.
We have a closing tradition on the podcast.
What is it?
It's if you had to give a message. So let's say, for example, some point in the future, you have children and they listen to this podcast one day, they're 18 years old and you're not there. What message would you give to your children when they're 18 and they were listening to this? Take your time to think about it.
I have that message already.
Go for it.
I have to my sons I say, live by your father's words every day. Be the man who doesn't take shit, who never quits and takes risks, who's quick to help the ones he loves, who never hesitates, and when it's time to fight, let them feel your fists. Have faith in God and be strong-willed. Be defiant and sing to the enemy's armies. We obey only the king. And on any day, if people try to lead you astray, remember who you are. You are my son and the grandson of Saif.
Wow. This was one of the poems that you've written before.
Yes.
Where does that come from, this poem? I'm guessing you thought about this long and hard.
In case I'm not alive.
Is this written down somewhere?
Yes, it's written down somewhere.
Wow. Brother Zarir, it's been amazing having you on. The stories that you've given, I pray that it benefit not just me, but my audience as well. And most importantly, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. I know that you have a lot going on, and the fact that you've taken a little bit of time, I'll be forever grateful for that.
No, I'm happy for the invitation, and thank you for having me.